My name is Amanda. I am 38 years old. I am married. My husband's name is Michael. He is 42 years old. We have been married for 10 years. My life with Michael was simple. We lived in a small apartment. Michael worked at a logistics company near the airport. His job was stressful, but he always said he was doing it for our future. I worked at a medical office during the day. Life was busy, but we were happy. Michael was the kind of husband who always told me everything. If something good happened at work, he told me. If something went wrong, he told me that too. That was our rule, no secrets. At least that's what I believed, but since last 3 weeks, something has changed. At first, it was small things. Michael began coming home later than usual. Sometimes he looked distracted, like his mind was somewhere else. One night during dinner, his phone rang. Michael looked at the screen and then he walked into the other room to answer. That was strange. Michael never did that before. When he came back, I asked him who it was. He said it was just someone from work, but something about his voice felt different. I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was imagining things, but my heart felt heavy. A few days later, I went to visit Ellen. Ellen is my friend. She lives in the apartment next to ours. Ellen is older than me, and she has lived in this building for many years. I knocked on her door. Ellen opened it and said, "Amanda, come in." We sat at the small table in her kitchen. Ellen looked at me. She said, "Amanda, what's wrong?" I tried to smile. I said, "Nothing." But Ellen raised her eyebrow. She said, "You forget. I have known you for 3 years." Then I told her everything. I told her about the late nights, the secret phone calls, the strange way Michael avoided my questions. Ellen listened quietly. When I finished, she said, "Sometimes people carry problems alone, not because they want to hurt us, but because they think they are protecting us." Her words stayed in my mind. Maybe she was right. Maybe Michael was dealing with something difficult. That night, Michael came home later than usual. He looked nervous, not tired, not distracted, nervous. He put his keys on the table and avoided looking at me. Then he said, "Amanda, have you ever thought about moving?" I was surprised. I said, "Moving? Moving where?" Michael said, "I don't know. Maybe another city. Maybe somewhere closer to the coast." That was strange. We had never talked about moving before. Our jobs were here. Our life was here. So why was he suddenly asking this? I looked at him. I said, "Michael, what is going on?" Michael shook his head. He said, "Nothing." But something felt off. Later that night, Michael was taking a shower. His phone vibrated on the kitchen counter. I wasn't planning to check it. I really wasn't. But the screen lit up and I saw a message notification. It only showed a few words. The message said, "Did you tell her yet?" My heart stopped. Tell me what? When Michael came out of the bathroom, I tried to act normal, but my mind was racing. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I looked at him and said, "Michael, I think it's time you tell me the truth." He froze. For a moment, he didn't say anything. His face was full of fear. He knew I had noticed something. Michael said, "Tell the truth." "About what?" I said, "About the message." He said, "You saw my phone?" I said, "I saw the notification. It said, 'Did you tell her yet?'" Michael looked angry and worried. Then he sat down at the sofa. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I said, "Michael, are you hiding something from me? You can tell me the truth." Michael said, "Amanda, it's not what you think." I said, "Then explain it." Michael said, "Amanda, I already made my choice." My heart began to beat fast. I said, "What choice?" Michael said, "Amanda, you remember when my company started having problems last month?" I nodded. He had mentioned something about budget cuts. Michael said, "Things got worse, much worse. My department is closing." For a moment, I didn't understand. I said, "Closing?" Michael nodded. He said, "I'm losing my job." The world stopped. I said, You're serious?" He said, "Yes." I said, "But the message, the one that said, 'Did you tell her yet?'" Michael said, "That was my manager. He knew I was struggling to tell you. There's another position in the company, but it's in another city." I said, "A different city?" Michael nodded. He said, "Yes, it's far from here. I accepted the job." I froze. He said, "I know I should have talked to you first, but I was afraid that you would say no." I said nothing. Michael said, "Amanda, at the end of the day, I did it for us. I didn't want us to lose everything." My mind was still trying to understand everything. Michael was losing his job. He had accepted another one in another city without telling me first. I looked at him. He looked nervous, like he was waiting for me to get angry. And to be honest, part of me wanted to be angry, but another part of me understood something important. Michael had been carrying this problem alone. All the stress, all the fear, all the responsibility. He thought he had to solve it by himself. I said, "So that's why you've been acting so strange." Michael nodded. He said, "I didn't want to worry you." I said, "You should have told me." He said, "I know." For a moment, the room was silent again. Then I asked the question that was still in my mind. "When do we have to move?" Michael looked surprised. He said, "You're not angry?" I said, "Oh, I'm a little angry, but I also understand why you did it." His shoulders relaxed. I said, "We're a team, Michael. Next time we make decisions together." Michael nodded quickly. He said, "Yes, together." He took my hand and kissed me. Life was about to change. A new city, a new job, a new beginning. But at least now we were facing it together. If you liked this story, please like, comment, share, and subscribe.